Hello, guys. Happy Thursday, everyone. We are live on Facebook. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Today we have a lot of people connecting. I'm gonna turn down the volume. Okay, that's correct. So as I was saying, happy Thursday, everyone. We have people joining. I'm seeing from everywhere: the US, Canada, Latin America, Europe, Asia. We even have people from Africa. This is amazing. So I'm super excited to be moderating this webinar. Let me give me a second. I'm gonna. This is amazing. So I'm super excited. I'm muting myself because I'm. Okay, that's perfect. So my name is Fernando. I am the VP of Product at Product School. So as I was saying, I'm super happy to be moderating this live webinar on Facebook. Today we have a very special guest with us, but before we jump into the webinar, I wanted to give a quick introduction for all of you that are new to Product School, or all of you who joined one of our webinars for the first time. So what we do at Product School is we teach product management. We offer part-time product management courses where we train people on how to get a job as a product manager. We have 4 different courses. First one is about product management. We teach the fundamentals of product management, and we also train our students on the soft skills they need in order to face the process interview, the interview process, and how to get a job. The second course that we have is, we call it Coding for Managers. And this is all about coding, about building a fully functional website, front-end, back-end, and deployment. But the goal of this course is not for you to become a software developer, but for you to become a product manager and understand the technical stuff that is going on your product. The third course that we have is called Data Analytics for Managers, and the concept is pretty similar. We teach a lot of SQL, a little bit of machine learning, web analytics tools for you to know how to extract data and how to become more data-driven when making decisions about your product. And now we just released a new course about blockchain and cryptocurrencies for managers. We are super excited about it because we are starting the classes this week and we are completely sold out for them. So if you guys want more information about any of our courses, please go to our website, productschool.com, and check all of our locations. We have right now 14 campuses across the world, and all our courses. We have a lot of stuff going on, plus these weekly events that we organize on Facebook. That's amazing. Awesome, guys. So I wanted to introduce you to our speaker today. I was speaking with him yesterday. Today, he's very special, and I'm super happy to have him with us. So all yours, Ron.
All right. Thanks, Fernando. Hello, everyone. My name is Ron Lazaro. I am a product manager here at Ford Motor Company in Motor City, Detroit, Michigan. So just a little bit about me. I'm an engineer by education, and I've been working. I have about 15 years in the technology space. I've worked in, the environmental side of the business, and then I've worked now in automotive. So a lot of different roles that have kind of led me in, within product development space, and just my own background experience in being able to wear different hats and what I bring to the table as a product manager. So just, I started out my career curiously in construction project management. So it taught me a lot of discipline. And, that helps me in terms of what I need to do in trying to stay very focused and aligned in being able to bring structure and how do I bring value in what I do. So that's pretty much my background. I just, have a lot of experience within the technology space, building application development projects and, products. Overseeing programs. So just bring a whole variety of roles to the table. So that's pretty much a little bit about me. So with that said, I'm just gonna, is there anything else, Fernando, or just you want me to just go to the presentation? Do you have
that's great. Great intro, Ron. So something that I wanted to mention before we start is a couple of things. So the format of this webinar is going to be like a 15-20 minute presentation, more or less, and then we will have 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. So guys, if you want to ask any questions to Ron, I'm sure you will, please type the questions questions on the comment section on Facebook right below. So this way I can gather some of, or hopefully all of them, and Ron will answer them. And also, if you type a book on the comments section, you will get a free copy of the product book. The product book is a book that we released last year, where we try to cover a lot of different aspects about how to get a job as a product manager. So we are giving it for free today for this webinar. So the only thing you have to do is just type book in the comment section, and then you will receive a message on Facebook Messenger giving you the PDF of the book. So I think that's pretty much it. So go for it, Ron.
All right. Thanks, Fernando. So you heard him, and yeah, go ahead and get your resources. Very, very important. All right. So without further ado, let's dive right into. All right. Hope everyone can see my screen here. Try to move this down here to the bottom. So today's topic, what we want to talk about is, dealing with ambiguity as a product manager. So this is something that's very close to my heart because, as I mentioned, I have a technology background, and I work in the technology industry. So a lot of years of experience building, as I mentioned, products, programs, projects, dealing with a lot of these things. And ambiguity has been something that I thrive in. So what I wanted to do was, in this presentation, be able to structure those skill sets that I have developed over a period of time and try to encapsulate them and offer them, as some guidance to newer product managers, people that are looking for, how do we, when we break in, how are we handling certain things? So we'll talk about some of those key concepts as we go along. But, that's pretty much what I wanted to bring to the table today in just discussing about ambiguity. Let me see here. All right. So ambiguity, why ambiguity in product management? One of the things that, as I mentioned, when you are a product manager, you have to be the visualizer in the team. You are somebody that has to wear the hat. They call it, you have to have empathy about the customer. You might hear terms of design thinking, which is having empathy, being able to sit in the customer seat and drive the experience. So there's a lot of things that you need to do in product management where you really need to have the process of visualizing things that are not there, things that don't exist. When you come across those situations, ambiguity is very, very common. So I have seen throughout my career, a lot of people get frustrated with ambiguity because they feel that, it's too ambiguous. I want to move on to familiar terrain. But what I have seen in my experiences is if you want to be a product manager, you need to know how to deal with this ambiguity. You need to lead the team through these ambiguous situations, and you need to know how to really tame it in a sense, and being able to bring out, constructively, you're trying to bring out a plan. Okay, how do we approach to deal with this ambiguity? So the first thought that came to my mind was putting this picture on the screen. I mean, some of you might have seen this before. Maybe it's new to others. This image is actually called "My Wife and My Mother-in-Law." So it's an image by Edwin Boring. They also call it the Boring image. So it is actually the most famous of the ambiguous illusions. So, to some of you, this might look like a young woman. Another person, it might look like a grandma. So it actually, it just depends on, how you look at the image. And it is something that's very ambiguous to say, what is this image trying to represent? So that's pretty much, this is, Boring was a psychologist. He was very interested in illusions. And, one of the things that he mentioned was, it is really not easy to put a line where, where one woman starts and the other woman, ends. So you really have to think about, when you're looking at it, it's all about you determining what this image represents. So to me, what this, what I take away from this image is, much like understanding this image, the key to dealing with ambiguity in product management really lies in your ability to draw out perceptions. Because as I mentioned, you really don't know where one image starts and the other image ends. Really, what you're trying to do in product management is trying to draw out user perceptions or teams perceptions or stakeholder perceptions. You're really trying to understand from a perception angle what are they really thinking, what are they feeling, and being able to draw that out. And that's one of the things that you want to do in dealing with any level of ambiguity. So, as I mentioned, throughout my career, I've really been thriving in a lot of ambiguous situations, and I try to put that into a structure or a framework. And I came up with 3 keys that that you need to handle the ambiguity. The first key, is you really got to make it time bound. We'll talk about these very specifically as we go along. But one is you got to be time bound. Don't try to organize chaos. As I mentioned, ambiguous situations are bound to result in chaos, because when people don't know what they're really, if it's not familiar terrain, it's always going to be that people are talking about things, and there's going to be a lot of chaotic situations. So what you need to do is don't try to organize the chaos. What you need to do, though, is you need to focus on outcomes and decisions as your data point. So again, we'll go into these keys in much detail, and that's the meat of this presentation. But this is what I have found very, very helpful throughout my career in being able to handle ambiguity is trying to be time bound, not trying to organize the chaos, and really being focused on outcomes and decisions as my data point. So those are the 3 keys of how I've dealt with ambiguity, and now we'll just go through one by one. The first one, what we talk about is being time bound. Some of you might know they call it the mnemonic of SMART, which means specific, achievable, relevant, and time bound, which basically it gives the criteria in setting of objectives. Some of you might be familiar with it. If you don't, I would recommend you look it up, because in objective setting, it is something that you really want to follow as a paradigm of how you set up objectives. So the T in SMART stands for, one of the definitions around it is being time bound. So that's something that sticks with me, because, whenever you're faced with an ambiguous situation, I did talk about chaos. It is okay to let chaos reign. But what you want to do, though, is you want to make sure that this period of time, it's very time bound. You want to make sure that things get really structured, and you want to bring things into a time bound fashion. So there's 3 images on your screen. One is work. So let the work continue. You see, this little experimentation beaker over there. So as a product manager, you do a lot of experimentation. So let experimentation continue. And the core of this ambiguity that whenever you come into these situations is meetings. You're going to have a lot of meetings. I mean, a lot of meetings. So it is fine for you to go through this time where you just feel that there's just a lot of things are just happening, but things are not just coming together. But let things continue, but try to be time bound. So, for us within Ford, we work within a scaled agile framework. We have program increments in terms of how we do our work in the agile framework. You talk about iterations. So what I try to do pretty much is, if I come across this ambiguity, is either make it iteration specific, or we're making it a program increment specific. So try to make it very, very specific. Try to make sure that you're time bound, and only at the end of that time, you're really trying to come out with some kind of outcome. You really don't want to focus on outcomes right off the bat. You want to be able to make this time bound and just let things continue. Just let things go through. Don't try to, don't let it go beyond the time, because you really want to make sure that everything is constricted within that time paradigm. So with that said, the takeaways from the first one is you really got to be time bound. Don't strive for any quick wins within this time box. You really don't want to try to, when you're doing your work, you're doing your experimentation, or you're doing all your meetings, don't try to come up with quick wins. But all you need to do is you just try to focus things within the time box, but ship when possible. If you have something that you can ship, you can test it out, you can get feedback on, just continue to do that. Keep tasks going, let conversations flow. And again, only commit to something at the end of a time box. So those are the key takeaways from the first key, which is being time bound. Then the second key is we say don't try to organize chaos. So this is my favorite thing, is because you really try to be like an investigator. You're really trying to step back, and you're just trying to observe. Just try to observe, and what you're trying to observe is just patterns. Just try to look for patterns, because one of the things that you'll start to see is when you come up with ambiguous situations is when you're going through all these meetings, you're going through all these tasks, you're going through all these different activities that you're doing, you'll start to see that there are a lot of patterns starting to emerge. The way people talk, the way people do things, you're really starting to, focus on just only observing things. So we'll talk about what kind of patterns you're really looking for in the next key. And, one of the things I do want to mention is key number 2 and key number 3 kind of go in parallel. So these are not discrete items. They're happening in parallel within your key 1, which is being time bound. So all you need to do is just step back, try to observe, and you're looking for patterns. You really don't try to organize things. You're really not trying to, bring anything within this time. Like, I need to come up with something. People might come to you and ask, what do you have? Do you have a plan? Do you have something? What are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? Are we going to be able to deliver things? My answer to all those things is stay posted. I'll come back to you. I'll get you an answer when at the end of the increment, or I'm going to get you an answer at the end of the iteration. So really all you're trying to do in this stage is, you're trying to step back. You're trying to observe. You're really trying to pay attention to, what's really happening. When I talk about patterns, I'm kind of showing on my screen here an image where you're really looking at the colored cables. What is really interesting in this is that, when you come up to something like this that has, such chaotic, cables over there, the best way to organize it, you're just looking for different colors. Another thing that comes to mind, when I talk about patterns is, I love, jokes. So, there's knock-knock jokes, there's bar jokes. You really know what is a knock-knock joke, because if you're not familiar with it, you can look it up. It just follows a pattern. Someone says a knock-knock joke, you really know that they don't have to tell you it is a knock-knock joke. You really know it is a knock-knock joke because it has certain elements of how it follows. So basically what you're trying to do is that my essence of what I'm trying to convey is step back, look at the information, and just try to look at patterns of how things are being organized, how people are saying things, people are doing things. So that's pretty much all you need to do is don't try to organize them. Don't try to jump in and say, okay, I need to organize this. I need to make something out of this. I need to deliver something. I need to give a value on it. So don't try to do that. Just step back and try to, just pay attention to patterns. So take away from this, don't try to organize chaos. Just structure the activity and conversation outcomes by looking for patterns. So all you're doing is just having your meetings, your experimentation, or your work. All you're doing is you're just trying to, look for patterns. One thing that I do want to mention is, in my experience, I use something that's called the icebox. If something doesn't fit a pattern, I try to icebox it, which means that we'll come back to it later. Right now I don't know much about it. It doesn't fit anywhere. So try to icebox it, because you can always come back to it later, revisit it, and see, is this really going to fit my pattern, or I'm going to just throw it away? I really don't want it anymore because it's not relevant anymore. Because what I've found is, in my experiences, a lot of times you spend a lot of time and effort, and you're really trying to work on some item that really, after a couple of iterations or a couple of, an increment, you find out that it's not relevant anymore. So you tend to experience, you tend to put a lot of effort on something that really does not have a lot of value. So feel free to use the icebox. If you find something that doesn't fit a pattern, just try to move it to the icebox, but try to focus on patterns. So that's the key number 2. Key number 3 is actually, where the fun begins. What you're trying to do is really looking for data. As a product manager, your main job is being very data centric. Data is in everything you do. You really want to make sure that you're really looking at data, you're really evaluating data. Don't try to limit it and say, oh, my data is only by looking at user metrics. I'm only looking at pain points that I'm collecting, or, I'm trying to get some kind of metrics out there that I can look at, that's visible, that I can put on a fancy chart and present to stakeholders. That's not really the only data you need to collect. Data is in everything. To me, when I'm going through my ambiguous situations, outcomes and decisions are really my data points. And that's what I want when remember I said key number 2 and key number 3 kind of work together, is when I'm really organizing and looking at my patterns and how I'm creating my patterns, I'm looking at this kind of data to create my patterns. So say we had a meeting and we're talking about something and we're really trying to get answers about it. Once I arrive at an answer, you need to focus. Remember, I said we structure the conversation activity to get to an outcome, a decision in the meeting. You get that, and that becomes your data point. And as you continue to organize your data, you'll start seeing that there is a pattern in how you go about it. So outcomes, they really come from the activities you do. The decisions come from all the meetings you're going to have. So we said that within your time bound, you're really working on your meetings, your tasks, your experimentation. Try to get your outcomes and try to get your decisions and try to organize them so that you can be very, you can look at that data and make and really structure it. So what ends up happening is that, so to give you an example, to just put this into a context is, we were tasked with building out, new services into an ecosystem, and we're going in there. There's an existing system, but we're trying to build new services. And when we ask everyone, how do we need to go about it? The first thing is we want everything. We want end to end. No one can give us an answer of where to really start. So that's ambiguity. You don't know where to start. So in order to do this was, okay, let the conversation flow. People start talking. And as I started getting information, we started doing some experiments. I started to see that there was common themes and there was a logical place to start, which was we're going to do something where we can search for a customer, we can find some information, and we can use that end to end to test the ecosystem. So those are kind of things that you really want to do is, and that didn't come from me. I didn't make the decision. I didn't say that's exactly what we want to do. It was people's feedback. It was organizing that data points in order to get that pattern and say, this ideally, from looking at the data, that this is something that means something and is going to mean something to the stakeholders. And this is going to be something that people will back up in order for us to build our MVP or something that we're going to put out there and get the feedback on. So that's pretty much what you really are targeting. So takeaway 3 is focus on outcomes and decisions. You said outcomes come from all the activities you do, the meetings that you do, you get your decisions, use that as data points, create your patterns with this data, use these patterns to determine the approach to resolve the ambiguity. So basically, once you have those patterns, you're going to use that and come up with what am I going to do next to resolve the ambiguity, and then plan your attack, which is you come up with a nice ordered list or whatever you want to do out of that information and say, for us, it was, okay, now we're going to get into some design activities. We're going to go into development activities. We're going to do some automation. So those are kind of things that are going to come out of that. And you're really going to be able to handle ambiguity. And the main thing is you're going to get the support from everybody to do that, because that's something that people want, because that's exactly what you heard from the things that you did. So, to put it all together, ambiguity, chaos, normal in the life of product manager. Get used to it. As you come into being a product manager, just all you want to do is say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to get ambiguous, chaotic situations, my cup of tea. Focus on drawing out perceptions and ambiguous situations. Use the 3 keys. We talked about being time bound. Try to make sure that you're within a time, you're within time, that you're really trying to organize things, or rather trying to do activities. Don't try to organize your chaos, and just focus on outcomes and decisions as your data points. So in essence, hopefully that was helpful to you all. And, like, as I said, again, this is how I have done this. Practically, I've implemented it and we've actually seen success in it. Hopefully it can benefit you all. So Fernando, that's pretty much all I had. So I'll, give it back to you for any questions.
Thank you so much, Ron. It was great. It was a really, really, really interesting presentation. Now, as you said, it's time for questions from the audience. I was taking some of those questions and taking notes so we can tackle now. Now you can answer them. So the first one, a couple of people asked if you can give us some example of an ambiguous situation that you navigated via this framework, so we can understand how in an example how you applied all this stuff.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, there was one thing that we walked into the ambiguous situation where we're trying to replace a product, and we're trying to build a new product technically, because it was a very legacy system that we were trying to replace, and we're trying to bring in the product. We just didn't know the logical place to start, because when you're looking at replacing a product, and you're trying to bring enhancements, you just don't want to build something that's going to be totally out there, or you really don't want to build something that just doesn't meet the need of the customer because they are already using a product. So we just had no logical place to start. So for us, it was very ambiguous. And as I mentioned, every time you go and get feedback from the customers, it is, well, I want everything because I don't know what to tell you. Everything, as I mentioned, it's a product that they're using. So to them, they want everything. So for us to find out what is this place to, as a product manager, you understand the MVP concept. You want to take it, you want to build something, and you want to ideate on it. You want to build, you want to iterate, you want to do things. So if you really want to build a product, you have to have a logical starting place. you can get all this data, you can look at it, and you're looking at it, but it was an ambiguous situation for us because we're looking at it and saying, like whatever we build, the customer is really saying, well, that really doesn't make any sense, or whatever we propose to them. So that's why we started having these conversations, collecting the data points, and then looking at it and saying, finally, they all agreed that, you know what, this is something that we would consider testing with you because we would consider using, because it makes sense for us that if you're going to give us something that can search, yeah, of course, we'll use it. And that helped us to be able to test the ecosystem. We got a ton of learning because we were working in a new region, we were using new technology, we were doing a lot of different things, and it helped us to get that consensus to do it. So hopefully that was, a specific answer to the question.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ron. I have another question from Donalyn. The question is, do you find more ambiguity when trying to determine what problem you are trying to solve, or during the development, the development or delivery of the solution?
In both. Ambiguity exists everywhere. You're really, this one I was just giving a specific example, which is, just at the beginning of a project or what we're trying to do, in building our product. So, the ambiguity really exists in every situation. When you're doing development, you're always choosing the path to go. I mean, whether it's what technology I need to choose, or, like for us is, we're trying to build a router capability. Do we build it within we're trying to make decisions on, what is the logical place for us to put this? Is this the right approach? Yeah, you can do multiple things of testing it. It really doesn't, we don't know because it doesn't, again, ambiguity is because it really doesn't exist or it exists and you really don't understand it. You really don't know what this really means. So it can exist in a whole variety of situations. Like it's not specific that you're only going to see it at the beginning and then things become more familiar. Product management is all about unfamiliar territory because you're the visualizer, you're the person that's always drawing out those perceptions, you're that person that's always sitting in the user seat, you're the person that can see what people don't see, and you can actually help people feel what, they really don't know what they're feeling initially. They're looking at it and saying, oh, what is this? So you're that person that's really empathizing, you're that person that's really drawing out those perceptions. So ambiguity, to me, it exists in everything you do.
That's great, and I totally agree, Ron. We've had so many of the cases and examples that you presented today, and I cannot agree more with that. So I have another question from Hanif. He's asking if is product management possible without following any process, methodology, or framework? They are creating an Android and iOS app without any process.
Yeah, maybe, product school can help you with the process because, I think, product management, to me, process is a very, it's kind of like a touchy subject in product management because a lot of people, they have bad experience with process. I'm an industrial engineer by education, so process is something that I hold dear. To me, there's no bad process. There's always inefficient process. And I think process is going to help you. So my philosophy, okay, just to put this very easy, my philosophy in process is there to help you go faster. If process is going to slow you down, it is actually bad process. So it is okay as an initial, you're building something and you don't have process around it, which is fine because you really have to go and you need to, proceed. But what I would urge you to do is you want to look at the path you're taking and you want to see that repeatability. Process is going to help you with repeatability. It's going to help you if you got a successful situation. That's going to really help you to repeat that success. It's going to help you to not reinvent the wheel. So those are kind of things that I think that, process, there's a lot of existing things that people are great resources, including, as I mentioned, product school, you can look, there's a lot of places that's going to teach you efficiency of how to do things better. You want to be smart about doing things. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You want to be able to really bring value in what you do. It's okay not to do anything with process, but end of the day, adopt good process or try to develop good process is going to help you to get those repeatable results.
Nice. I have one more question from Kevin. He's asking, what are the requirements for a product manager role? I know this is a pretty broad question, but maybe you can just keep it short and mention the main things.
I'll give you a very off-key answer, just because you as for now, a ton of resources out there, life experience. a product manager, I've seen product managers come from all backgrounds, and I think, you can leverage any life experience to be a really great product manager, because you need to be open, you need to be understanding, you need to make sure that you're a team player, you need to be a servant leader. There's so many qualities that a product manager, and this is a great field because it helps you develop those things that you don't have, as well as it can leverage any skills that you have. So that's why I really love the field of product management, because I believe that, I have an engineering background, I have, a little bit of construction background, I have, technology background, I've worked in management, I've done consulting, I've done a lot of these different things. Product management really allows me to put everything together to be able to leverage those backgrounds and experiences to build valuable products to the customer, being able to deliver that value continually to my customers. So hopefully that was helpful.
That was great. And I would like to point out that communication for me is also very, very important. If you have domain expertise, it's always easier for you to understand better the type of products that you should be building or the new features. And also, we have a pretty common question here, which is like, do I need to have a technical background in order to get a job as a product manager? We always say that you don't need to be a software developer in order to get a PM job. But I really think that it's important to have that technical background and at least to understand what it takes to build software. We are talking about software product management, and it's important to understand how everything is built, and you are able to estimate what it takes to build those new features or the stuff that you are building. So those are, as you see, it's pretty broad, and there are so many things that you need to master. But yeah, that was great. I have one more question from Amy. She's asking what kind of approach you take in terms of doing a research to come up with different ideas or alternatives, and how you prepare a product roadmap and vision.
There's a lot of resources out there. One of the things that we do within our organization is we have a lot of typical, typical artifacts that we got to follow, or process that we got to follow within our organization. But, in terms of resources, in terms of, information, so a product roadmap to me, it's pretty much, as I mentioned, it's getting, as a role of product manager, when you're developing this roadmap, you're really not giving someone a plan. You're not saying, here's something we're going to develop, and, you're just not presenting something. It is you as the facilitator being able to bring out the different, all that information that's out there, being able to contextualize it and being able to present that information. And you are the person that's going to visualize it for them and help them to see the end goal. So a product roadmap, again, I don't mean to be vague, but resources, you can use anything. There are a lot of good books out there in terms of, how do you, there's tools out there that you can use. As I mentioned, again, product schools, got content that you can look at in terms of building out the product roadmap, and, how do you take it from there? But the core concept for me is that getting that input from people, being able to get that consensus from people. Fernando talked about the communication, clear, concise communication, being able to, a product roadmap. I've seen so many different types of roadmaps. Yeah, we do follow a structure, but within that, there's, there's, when you work in infrastructure, there's different roadmaps. When you work within, when you work in an application development, there's different roadmaps. When you go to manufacturing, there's different kind of roadmaps. There is really no, one size fits all, that I've actually, seen. So, and I mentioned, at the end of the day, you're really going to follow corporate, structure for the most part. But what you as a product manager bring value to that roadmap is, how do you make sure that that information is, you are able to elicit that information, transpose that information, contextualize it, and really present that information? Because people will need to really look at you. You're that person that's like the captain, of a ship, really giving that direction on that roadmap. So resources wise, for me, what I personally use is I use anything, I'll be, but I still put it within the framework that's required. But for me, I try to, we've done a whole lot of different things within outlining the features, where we need to be within the 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, 1-year plan, 3-year plan. So we go through a whole different things. We do the product roadmaps, we work on the architecture roadmaps, where are we, how are we giving the interoperability? So there's a lot of different things that we use, the tools and technologies that we use. End of the day, as I mentioned, I'm the person responsible for bringing that together.
Nice. We're gonna have one last question that I always like to ask to all of our speakers, which is, what is your main advice for aspiring product managers. We have a huge community of aspiring product managers trying to break into product. So what would be your biggest advice?
So my biggest advice to the product management community is be curious and be compassionate. It's something that you won't probably hear from a lot of people about the second one, but curiosity is something that is a very, very core component of being a product manager. You need to know how to go look for information. You need to know, today there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of content creators, but you need to be a person that knows how to analyze that content. There's structured instruction like product school that you can go to, and you can, know how to, because there's a ton of content, as I mentioned. You can go out there and read it and get confused, but you really need to know how to learn those skill sets in terms of being able to structure that content. So be very, very curious. As I mentioned, life experiences, you need to know how to leverage all those things, and you really need to bring it all together to be able to, I call it separating the stuff from the bluff and the fluff. So you really need to know how to, be able to just get all, because there's a lot of that stuff today, and you really need to know how to, if you go, as I mentioned, roadmaps, there's people are going to tell you 100 different ways to do it. But at the end of the day, you're the person that needs to put it all together. So curiosity is very, very important. And as I mentioned, structured education, with product school, that's something that I would highly vouch for. Compassion. As I mentioned, you won't hear this a whole lot, or maybe you do, but one of the things is they talk about compassion is empathy. One of my mentors really told me, nobody cares how much you really know unless they know that you really, really care. So I thought that was really good information for me, because end of the day, you really need to know that whatever you do, you're doing it for the customer, and that you care about the customer. And as long as you can show that in your work and in your products, you will be a really good product manager. And you can have a ton of education, you can have a ton of skill sets, but at the end of the day, if you cannot be curious and if you cannot be compassionate, I feel that it will be a little bit of a struggle being able to make your mark, because as I mentioned, it will, to me, I find that it sets me apart in being able to do what I do and try to and to do it really well. So hopefully that was helpful, and can be a good takeaway for you all. Curious and compassionate.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge, experience, examples. It was amazing, Ron. Before we leave, I wanted to mention and give you all some free resources that you can use for that process of breaking into product. So we are managing the biggest product management group on Facebook. Actually, today we reached a really good number, 23,000 people already in this group sharing good stuff, a lot of job opportunities, a lot of really good stuff. So I really invite you to join it. The name of the group is Product Managers. So just type Product Managers on the search bar on Facebook, and then you'll see a huge community of product managers and aspiring product managers sharing knowledge, and I'm sure you'll love it. We also run the biggest Slack community. We also have 23,000 people there already. If you want to join that community for free, go to our website, and then you'll see how to do it. Also, we organize these events every week. We have Slack AMAs on Tuesdays and live webinars on Thursdays like this one. So guys, if you want more information about our events, same, go to productschool.com, and then you'll see the whole list of events that we have in the upcoming weeks, because we have amazing speakers coming up. And last but not least, if you want to take it to the next level and really break into product management, feel free to go to productschool.com and see all the courses that we are offering. Right now, we have 14 locations, 14 campuses across the world. So check which one is the closest one to you, and you will see the dates and more information about the courses, instructors. They all come from companies such as Facebook, Google, Uber. So it's just amazing, the experience of these courses. So if you guys want more information, go to Product School. And thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Ron. It was really, really nice. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.